People who live in a rural area out in the country. What will city folk never understand? I grew up in a tiny town in the south. One weekend, I was visiting from college and pulled up behind a guy on a horse waiting at the stoplight. I was like, wow, when did we get a stoplight? I'm also from a one stoplight town, except it breaks all the time, so they put up stop signs. Apparently we used to have two stoplights. The other was strung between two buildings. One of the buildings burned down, so they just put up stop signs. On phone to customer service. Again. Oh, sorry, we can't ship to PO boxes. I understand that, but unless you are shipping with FedEx or UPS, I physically cannot get mail at my house. It's a rural area. Why don't you just get mail at your house? Because I literally cannot. Lose power in a storm? Better not flush the toilet. Your well pump is out too. Corollary. Filling the bathtub with water before a storm so that you'll have water if the power doesn't come back for a few days. I honestly didn't understand that this wasn't a thing in the city until recently. I thought losing electricity meant you lose running water. I live in a small city now, moved here recently, and thought I'd have to buy water to fill the tub before it stormed. I spend half my time in the middle of nowhere, half my time in the middle of a giant city, so I feel like I've seen both sides. What city folk don't understand is, you go grocery shopping in town on Monday, or whatever day. After Monday, you've now got all the food you're going to have until next Monday. Wednesday night, you get a strong craving for Ben & Jerry's cinnamon bun ice cream. Well, you're not getting any, because it's a half-hour drive into town and the only grocery store there closed at 6 o'clock. Forget to buy an ingredient you needed for a meal? Well, now you're having that meal without that ingredient, or you're having something from out of the deep freeze. But the flip side of this inconvenience is, you can go an entire day without having to talk to or interact with anyone. Yes, there is no, I don't want to eat this, I'll just order a pizza. There is nowhere to just go grab something to eat, unless you want to drive 30 minutes you're cooking or having a sandwich. It's nothing for me to drive 4 hours one way to get to see a specialist if I am having a health issue. I usually make the trip in one day. 8 hours of driving to see the doctor for one 15-minute appointment. There is literally nothing between the small place where we live and the next largest city 4 hours away. We always tell people that are passing through to be sure to make sure your car is full of gas, use the bathroom, and get anything you might want to eat or drink now, because there is nowhere along the way to really stop and do that. My commute is currently an hour and a half, as it's the closest job I found. I think city people would freak out to find out how few people actually lock the doors when they live out in the country. Growing up, we had 6 people living in the house and none of us even had a key to the house. We never locked the house. Our police department has such an uneventful life. One New Year's Eve when I was little, the police on the job had nothing to do, so they stopped at our New Year's party. The officers were showing us kids the inside of a police car and were just casually talking to the adults. After about 10 minutes, they finally got a call to catch a runaway cow. Apparently some farmer's cow got out and didn't know where it went. The police searched for about an hour and never found it. That was the only situation of the entire night. That not having a vehicle can literally not be an option sometimes. For any real groceries I have to drive over a hill at least 10 miles. There is no public transportation or ride sharing. Ditto. My closest neighbor is over a kilometer walk away. The neighborhood gas station is a 5-10 minute drive, and the nearest grocery store is well over a 20-minute drive. Literally impossible to live without a vehicle. Aside from everything mentioned, making good with your neighbor, I don't mean drinks every Saturday night, but everyone helps everyone because you will need it. Everything is 45 minutes 1.5 hours away, whether you need some starting fluid for an engine, or he needs some eggs to finish up that pea crust before guests come over, or just help with a little physical labor. Heck, without me asking, my neighbor drove his tractor down the road to clear my snowy driveway. I'm not some old lady, I'm a 30-year-old dude with the machinery to do it myself. I've lived in the city, and not only do people not know their neighbors, but when they do it's usually over passive-aggressive behavior and not letting little things go. Oh, Jesus frick, they planted begonias within 3 feet of the property line, which is against city ordinance. WHO cares. What's better, having those begonias 6 inches further back, or neighbors who don't hate you? Had a GF that was upset that I regularly let my neighbors use my hose to fill their drinking water before they got a well set up at their camp. They're my neighbors. I'm not going to make them continue to drink river water. Wanna go to Walmart or Livestock? Okay, 40-minute drive, here we come. We moved up into the mountains a couple years ago and life up here is different. Everything is far away unless you want to go to the local market that has prices marked up high as a skyscraper. Barely any sidewalks or street lights. And internet is slower. Everybody knows each other, so gossip is an ongoing high thing to talk about, but the lack of traffic and the beautiful view is hard to beat. I live in a semi-rural town. It's the best of both worlds as I'm close to all the shopping and a short drive from nature areas. Silence is not the distant buzz of cars or airplanes overhead. Silence is when even the frogs or crickets aren't chirping, when all you can hear is the rustling of leaves as the midnight wind blows. No random conversations as a couple walk by your window. No bells or horns. My country living is in the middle of the forest on a lake. The only time you hear your neighbor is when they mow their lawn or it's the weekend and everyone is at the lake partying. Other than that, it's Mother Nature's finest choir. My favorite is when it's snowing and the snow absorbs nearly all the sound. It's unbelievable how quiet it can get. It stormed 2 days ago, so I have to use mobile data for this, because the Wi-Fi is still out. If you decide to send out a last-minute invitation, I require more than 10 measly minutes notice before the event of said invitation. The things I miss out on because I live 45 minutes away from anything. Peace and quiet, able to see the stars at night. I'm not terribly far from a city, but rural enough to be away from light pollution. Most of the people around me leave lights off at night outside, so nothing really affects sky viewing at night. I have a grocery store, pizza places, bakery, gas station, and liquor store all close enough to be convenient, yet not too close for comfort. Having said that, I grew up in a major city metro area, and I don't miss it at all. I can't believe that I had to scroll down this far to see a post about the peace, quiet and stars. I don't mind living in the city, but sometimes I just like to go outside at about 4 AM if I'm awake. Feel that nice refreshing coldness. Hear the complete silence that you can hear for miles and just look at the stars and the countryside. Cow tipping. I'd love to meet the idiot that came up with that brilliant idea. I'd love to see someone try and push over a 1,200-pound animal that is resting solidly on 4 legs. It's going to notice you trying to push it, get annoyed, and kick you. It's not fun. You're supposed to sneak up on them while they're sleeping, you say? Good luck, because they lay down when they sleep. I had to explain this to my city folk friends in college, and they still didn't believe me. Pretty sure the idea was invented to troll city people. 10 miles isn't far away. It's a 10-15 minute drive. A gun can be owned the same way you own a shovel or rake. It's just another tool. Drinking water and sanitation are both handled on site, and are your own responsibility to maintain. Internet connections suck. I live out in the country. I hear gunshots all the time. Something is always in season, or someone is trying to get a critter out of the yard. I don't really pay attention. The neighbor could be murdering his wife and I wouldn't think a thing if I heard shots from their house. If someone needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter if it's inconvenient or even if you like the person. You just help them because sure as crap you're going to need their help sometime. There is always that one cow, from that one dude, that always escapes to wander the roads at night, and it's 2 AM. Some cop or passing driver wakes you up, asking if that's your dumbass cow standing in the road. Then you have to call your nearest neighbor, to call that one dude, to get his fricking cow out of the fricking road, again. When my great-grandfather started getting dementia, he forgot that he did indeed have a massive cattle farm with a lot of cows. Instead of the one fricking cow, it was hundreds of fricking cows just running down the road. Luckily this made them easy to spot and round up. If there is a full moon, you can go outside and you can read a book because it's so bright. I really feel sorry for people in big cities who've never really seen a night sky. Everyone owns a gun and there's nothing weird or crazy about it. Full moon after a fresh snowfall was always my favorite. We'd take ATV rides with the headlights off. That mostly everyone is actually really friendly, at least where I live. As soon as you get off the paved roads and hit the dirt roads, almost every car passing will wave to you. This is kinda funny when I have a friend who lives in the city in the car with me. I'll wave to someone as they go by and they'll ask who that was and I'll say I don't know. They get really confused why I would wave to someone I don't know, but that's just how it is here. Definitely, if it's someone you know, you actually wave. If it's someone you don't, you give them that two-figure hey gesture over the steering wheel. I've only lived in a rural setting for about 6 years. Back in the big city now, I'd say the amount of unwanted pets that get dumped off. I spent 18 years in rural Iowa. You don't know peace and quiet until you've spent some time out on a deck in the middle of a clear night with nothing but a blanket and some tea. Also, the pies on windowsills thing is real. Lived in a small town, 2,000 people, for the first 23 years of my life. When I finally moved into the big town a whole 25 miles away, I was shocked that I could order pizza online and get it delivered to my house. Also, I haven't seen the stars since I moved out of my small town, but every time I'm back there visiting my mom, they are so loud because it's so dark. Unless you've experienced it for yourself, I can't really explain the night sounds you hear out in the sticks. On a cool spring night there's crickets, tree frogs and even whippoorwills that combine to create a symphony. It's beautiful really, and the one thing I miss most about living in the country. The terror of driving in the city for the first time, losing feeling in your hands from holding the steering wheel too tight. Cars everywhere, people everywhere, suicidal pigeons and so much happening in my periphery all the time. And traffic lights, duck that, they were intimidating. The closest traffic light to us was about 400 kilometers away, and I remember when that was put in, the controversy was amazing. When I first drove in the city it was with a manual car on a public holiday. That was not a fun time. Something little I noticed was city people don't get why you would casually nod or throw up a hand to strangers. In the country, if you pass some old dude in a rusty Ford, he throws his hand up to you. You do the same. I don't know the guy, but it's a common courtesy. City people seem to think that's weird, or even rude, but I like it. It says yeah, I'm busy with my own stuff, but I have time to acknowledge you, fellow human. That's the thing about being in the city. Although you're closer to all sorts of people, it can often feel like you've never been further away. I live in an old farmhouse. Old, like 100 plus years, in the middle of a field. I don't have cats because they're cute. I have cats because field mice are tricky little bastards that slip in when you open the door. So if you see a cat, don't touch it, it'll probably bite. And if you see a mouse, just give it an hour. The cat will bring it to me in a bit. The need to own a vehicle, especially a truck, Jeep / 4WD vehicle. No, I don't hate the environment. Yes, I know, I'm burning a lot of fuel. Yes, I would walk if I could, but it's way too far to get anywhere. Cycling isn't an option either, and no Prius is going to make it down the grids in the winter or muddy season. Backroading. I think this means something different depending on where you're from, but I grew up in a small town on a lake in Oklahoma. The closest movie theater or bowling alley was 45 minutes away. We had no entertainment, and everyone starts driving and drinking young. For us that meant grabbing a few of your friends, having someone older buy us a 30-pack of cheap beer, and then just driving around back roads by the lake. I never drink and drive now, but back then it was extremely common thing for us to do, and since we were on sparsely populated roads, where you hardly ever saw a car and weren't driving at excessive speeds, we were never much of a danger to ourselves or anyone else. We would just drive around, drink, listen to music, make jokes and bulls, and stop at random places we knew. It doesn't sound like much when I type it out, but we had a lot of really good times doing basically nothing. Now that I'm older and live in a fairly large city, I miss those times where we had nothing to do and absolutely no worries. Literally everyone booze cruises out here, or as we call it, drinking some road pops. I can't tell you how many times I've been driving to town, and whoever is in the passenger seat is cracking a beer, and it's not even noon. It's time for bed, but it's only 10 PM. I've lived for 16 years in the rural area and almost 7 now in a city. It's just so different. Whenever I tell my friends that lights are off at around that time, they freak out and ask where I get drinks. I drink a lot in the city. I told them we usually just have beers stashed in a huge ice bucket or an open bottle of hard liquor somewhere because people are going to think that you are some criminal if they see you walking on the streets at like, let's say, past midnight. And you don't even have to be drunk to fetch you the local police. Not really cops, but they go around the area to check past midnight for some weird stuff. You just need to innocently have a stroll past midnight. I grew up in rural Illinois and now live in Chicago, and there are things that I love about both places. I love all of the things available to me here in the city, but I love going back home and being in the open country and able to relax easier. Plus it's a frick ton cheaper out there. I'm finally getting internet access, and thus phone service, hopefully. 1. Cellular Wi-Fi hotspot, deep cycle battery, charge controller, and modified car charger for the hotspot, all in a wood frame, all in a Rubbermaid bin, on the ridge, bolted 20 feet up a tree so no one fricks with it, solar panel on top. 2. 700 feet away, through trees, down in the holler, Wi-Fi router with 30 dB parabolic antenna. Fingers crossed. The feeling of sitting down to a meal, and everything you eat is something you grew or an animal you harvested. I grew up very rural, and every single meal we ever had there was food that came from our garden or an animal we shot or had slaughtered. I live in an urban environment now, and I'm entirely dependent on grocery stores for food. It's normal to most, but I'm still getting used to the fact that I just can't walk out to the garden to grab vegetables for that night. I also put on weight because everything is more about convenience. Chores are in-house only, and delivery pizza is a click away. I have to go to a gym now to get the exercise I would have normally gotten from just my daily routine back home. I moved to a farm when I was 10 and I adored it. Even young there was a ton of work for me to do, plus I worked on neighboring horse farms, but in the end I have a strong work ethic and know nothing comes for free. Also encouraged me to love my own space since there aren't many friends in the country, and when parents are busy with chores, they can't drive you around. My spare time I explored the woods, fished in our river, had wicked forts and raced around on dirt bikes, four-wheelers and whatever we could get our hands on. For a girl, these were valuable times for me. We don't lock our doors on our house. Why bother? If you need to come in that bad, you must need something or to get out of the weather. Either way, I don't want you to feel bad about breaking my door. We leave the keys in our vehicles. If somebody needs my vehicle more than I do, they will bring it back with gas. Nobody will steal it because everybody who sees them will ask, why are you driving Dai's outfit? You can never get away with anything, ever. See above. We are polite to everybody, even if we don't know them. Because if we don't know them, we will soon enough. And they may be the person who pulls you out of the snowdrift. We wave at everybody. See above. We leave our cars running at the store in the winter, because it is cold. I live out in the country, but within reasonable distance of a decent sized town. Recently, city people are starting to buy small tennis shaker plots and build houses around me. They fail to understand that it is not silent out here like they think it is, and how much work it takes to keep up an acreage. Here's a list of complaints I have received from my newest neighbors that just moved out here from the city. 1. The chickens were walking along the fence line and feeding. That is unacceptable because they may step onto their property. They never go more than a couple feet past the fence. 2. My uncle and I were making too much noise with a skid steer and chainsaws removing dead and dying trees on my property in the middle of the day. 3. The cows smell too bad and they can smell it in their house. 4. It gets too dusty when we cut the pasture and we need to stop doing it cause they can't have their windows open. They have also complained to other neighbors about noise and stuff they make on their property, and the farmers around here haven't even started working their fields yet. So city folk will just never understand the lifestyle that comes with living out in the country. There's tractors and equipment making noise, people shooting guns, livestock and other animals. There's dusty from fields. There's dirt bikes and four-wheelers everywhere. There's just different sounds and smells than the city, and you cannot change it just because you complain. Sorry, I kind of started to rant there, so TLDR. There's tractors, guns, and livestock. Deal with it if you live out here. A person in the city will take their kid to the local park to play. A person in the country will have to build by their kid a playground area. That's a reason why many people from the country are more anti-tax than city people. They don't notice the benefits as much. Not only anti-tax but anti-regulation. You have to get permits to build pretty much anything on your own property, at least in some states. Being friendly with your neighbors is a matter of having people to help you in a time of need, not just niceness. Growing up in a small town, your neighbors are the only people who can help you in case of something hitting the fan before the authorities can arrive. For example, in my neighborhood I have been present for 2 deaths, 2 births, 3 tree fall removals, 3 possible burglaries, 1 real burglaries, 1 homeless person sleeping in a barn, 2 neighbors too drunk to make it to bed, 1 collapsed roof from snowfall. For most of those the police, firemen, ambulance did come, but it was the people in the house next to you that arrive first and know you best that help you through the tough times. I don't know how it is in big cities. Maybe you guys have that, maybe you don't. Everything is closed 8 months of the year. I'm from vacation land, where the only important people are the ones who don't live here. If you see a 12-year-old driving, they've probably been at it for a few years. If you're in the woods and it's a healthy forest, it is loud. Drinking from a creek river won't kill you or give you giardia, unless it's cloudy. Stars and the moon provide more than enough light to see by just fine most of the time. If you're going into town, you figure out all the errands you have to run and make a day out of it, because it can be a several-hour drive to get to where you need to be. There is at least a 90% chance you've never heard of my town. Every time I say this, someone acts all high and mighty like they have extensive knowledge of small towns in my province because they drove through Ashcroft one time. And in most cases they either have no idea where that is or they know but only went there to fish or something. People stop by and knock on the door just to hang out for a bit and say hello. No reason, no planning ahead. Just a hello, maybe a beer, some chat. That's it and they leave. If you're walking on the sidewalk somewhere, strangers say hello. It's very strange to walk by someone and not say hello. New car in the driveway, everyone notices and will ask you about it. Gas station, restaurant, have an extra car you can borrow. It's a $500 junker but it gets from A, B, and you happily accept. Everyone at some point is going to need a ride, including you. You always give a ride. Someone has got a truck who can help you tow move something. If you're lucky they have a trailer too. Probably 90% of guys have gutted and skinned an animal of some sort. Fish, deer, raccoons, etc. A reasonable percentage of the women you know had a kid in their teens. A roadie is a beer you drink on the way to the party. I could probably go on if anyone cares. Dear sweet lord, they will never understand that farm animals are just fine living outside. We have sheep and twice now. Some dipstick has called it in. Look, for one thing, this is a primitive breed that is known for its ability to live in very harsh environments. Not that ours is, but there were some pretty cold days this winter. For another, each one has a ton of wool on its back. They would get overheated if we put them in a barn. Not to mention, my husband is out there twice a day, even when he's sick, making sure they get fresh hay, fresh water, and a scoop or 2 of grain. These animals are very well cared for, but because they're outside all the time, people automatically think they must be mistreated somehow. Nope, they're just outdoor animals. They are not pets. We raise them for wool and we raise them for meat. If your only experience with animals involves a toy breed of dog with his own wardrobe, you know nothing of animal husbandry and I am inwardly rolling my eyes at you. A Prius is not a good vehicle for everyone. If you live out where the roads don't get plowed for a few days after a snowstorm, if at all, you will need 4WD. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.